Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. So it's been a bit since Origins is out, and I guess thoughts for then what happened in the next AC game are out there, and there have been leaks, I guess, of code names and locations and things about biox sequels and all that happening, and so I just thought I'd kind of lay out what I'd like to see in the next game, whether it is a biox sequel or not, because that's all really up in the air right now. Nothing really definitive on that. I'd really like to see a biox sequel, but I think Ubisoft has kind of a habit of taking Assassin's Creed characters and using them for one game and then not using them again, and I think that could happen, as sad as it would be, because Bayek was a great character. It is entirely possible. Um, so I think I'll just kind of list off what I want to see in the next game in no really particular order, just kind of going through them. So I guess I'll just start off. Um, the first thing I would really like to see is better side quests, because the side quests were good and they made the world feel more diverse, but there was a bit of inconsistency. Certain quests were really well presented with cutscenes and significance to the world, and then some just weren't. They had dialogue scenes where oftentimes Bayek would be actively blocking the quest giver by standing in a position in front of them and blocking them, which is really bad presentation of that, because I don't know, it just annoyed me, but I think it's also bad because that is just to kind of do some theater stuff. It is important not to block, and I think that it qualifies for games. And a lot of quests also resulted in carrying someone with a broken leg or ankle out of a fort, and that just got old after the fifth or sixth time. And I think just having a greater diversity of actual quest objectives as well as better presentation would help the game world feel even better. So, aside from that, getting into the combat in Origins was a really advertised thing when the game was being hyped up before it came out, and then it was going to be harder and more diverse, and it was. And I haven't played Dark Souls, so I wouldn't know, but I have heard that it is kind of in the style of Dark Souls. Mm. But I feel like it could still be to have some originality and be a bit more fleshed out, be touched up or changed in a few ways. And so I just thought up that maybe being able to target certain body parts with the bow or even with the melee weapons, kind of like in Fallout, would be good, or even having enemies be more aggressive and work as a team to like employ tactics of surrounding and outflanking the player could be just make it feel like the combat is more alive and like the enemies are really a dangerous threat, and that would just make it more fun. Aside from that, before the combat, having the stealth, the stealth was also a pretty good improvement over previous games. It was really good, and it still had problems though. The enemies will still quickly lose interest in the player after you've left the range of detection, and that just makes it still feel like the enemies aren't very intelligent or really concerned with the safety of their base or themselves, and that just doesn't feel good in a game with a lot of stealth. So having enemies chase after the player or work as a group to catch them would make it feel even better and make that already good stealth just take it to the next level and make it better. Um, Now, before Origins came out, I do recall a bit of confusion around why assassinations were no longer instant kills, because when you stab someone in the neck, they usually die. Not all the time, per se, but that's always usually a pretty fluke instance. Now, I think this does help the leveling mechanic, because that way a level 1 player can't just jump around a level 40 fort, taking out every guard easily by just calculating their approach and being stealthy, because that just screws up the whole leveling mechanic. But it is a bit unrealistic to stab someone in the neck and have them then just turn around and destroy you. So I think maybe having higher level enemies and stronger classes be more alert and attentive and make it harder to sneak up on them would be a good way to replace that and have those instant kill assassinations feel earned when you go up against a higher level enemy, and that would just really help it to feel still difficult while still allowing you to stab someone in the neck and have them die. Now, something that has always been a problem for the franchise, even in Origins, is the open world. Now, it was very much remedied in Origins. One big issue, which was the pointless collectibles, which made up a large portion of what was in the open world, and that just was no good. But still, the open world doesn't feel very lived in, because still, I didn't notice something that was mentioned before the game came out, which was that NPCs were going to have a schedule that they adhered to. They would go to bed at this time and move around and have things they had to do. And I didn't notice that, except when I was waiting for guards in a fort to take a piss so I could assassinate them in private. That was when I noticed it. And so what I mean to say by that is quest givers didn't move around the map other than Reda and his daily loot box quest. Yum yum, loot boxes. And most quest givers were still as dry as a wood chip fire. So, I just think that having the quests concern the world, like, the quests in Cyrene, which had kind of this, there was like 3 characters, like an architect, a healer, and I think a soldier or something. Or a philosopher. I'm not sure who the third one is, I don't really remember. But their quest lines all interlocked in the end, and it was all very concerned around how Cyrene was faring under the dark shadow of Flavius and all that. And it made the quest feel better, but also having that NPC schedule be more present and upfront than waiting for a guard to take a piss in a fort to assassinate him. I just feel like that would make the world feel more lived in if characters felt actually more active and had a better personality to each of them. Because Bayek and Aya and a lot of the enemies had a really good personality, but then the quest givers are still as dry as a wood chip fire, like I said before. And I just feel like that's not good, and the world just needs to feel more lived in. Now, moving on to kind of the last thing I'm going to touch on is a better skill tree. I've left this one for last because it's not a huge problem, because the skill tree, the idea of it was a great idea, and it was executed very well because it leaves the player, each and every player, freedom to get the perks they want without really having to compromise much on just going along a linear route of acquiring all the skills in a tree. To get that one skill perk you want, you can go around and skip around skills, and that just makes it a lot better. But I feel like, especially in the senior section of the skill tree, I found a lot of perks I just didn't think were useful, and so I didn't get them, and that's fine. But I just feel like having a full third of the skill tree feel mostly not super useful. I mean, aside from increased fire damage and selling things for more, I didn't really find much use in it. I mean, I rarely used the animal companions, even though that was cool. But I just feel like not having a skill tree where every perk is useful, maybe not to everyone, but is a useful thing in the game nonetheless, is like having a mechanic that you don't need to use outside of the introductory mission, like Revelation Spawn mechanic. I used that maybe once on my 3rd playthrough to distract some random guards. That's how useful I found it to be. Not that the skill tree was that bad, but I just feel having a third of the skill tree not be useful, mostly to me, just made it not so great, and I'd just like to see that remedied. But that's all the going on about what I'd like to see that I'm going to do for today, because, well, I can only do it for so long. But share your opinion on what you want to see in the next game in the comments. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, share it with someone else if you think they would enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of it. And I'll see you in the next one.